The Cowboys lost their 5th game of the season, and they look utterly hopeless right now. What is up, everyone, and welcome into A to Z Sports Dallas Prime Time. I am your host, Mauricio Rodriguez, streaming with you live every Sunday and Thursday night at 8 p.m. Central, and catching up with you Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays with quick hitting videos, so make sure you check those out. Man, Cowboys lost another one. 5th loss of the season, and things are not looking pretty right now. The NFC East appears to be completely out of their control, if we're being real. And the problem is, your Wildcat odds are not looking great either, because the Cowboys, again, are 3-5. And the worst part about it is that you look at games like today's, and there's not a whole lot you can bet on, right? There are teams that, I'm going to use the 49ers as an example, leading up to last weekend's game, right? The Niners were not doing great. They were 3-4, just like the Cowboys were before today's game. But the Niners had a strong rushing offense. The Niners had a strong pass defense. They had Nick Bosa doing his thing. They had an underrated group of cornerbacks. Brock Purdy was playing pretty great, even without some of his top weapons. With the Cowboys, though, the vibes are entirely different, because the Cowboys are a bottom 12 team in rushing. They are bottom 12 in passing the football. They're not great in situational football. The coaching staff isn't really providing a game-day advantage in several ways. Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb are not lifting the weaknesses of this roster, right? Jerry Jones called it doing more with less during the offseason. That is not happening. Now, I'm not blaming the quarterback or the wide receiver for it. I think mostly the team itself is to blame because of the way that it built itself, right? With the Joneses at the wheel. But yeah, there's not really a whole lot that you can bet on with this 2024 Cowboys team as far as turning it around goes. They did get us, I'm not going to lie, they did get us with that opening drive, didn't they? Did you feel it? Because I felt it. Did you guys did as well? Because when that game started, here's what happened. Cowboys defense got a stop. Now, you might be thinking, what are we making a big deal out of a single stop for? But I'll tell you why. The Cowboys had not gotten one of those stops in the entire season. That was the first time the Cowboys defense got off the field in its first drive without allowing any points. First time in 9 games that had not happened, right? 8 games, 3-5, yeah. I can count. I promise you I can count. Then the offense gets on the field, and they go with tempo. And they are rolling Dak Prescott to his left, finding a wide open Jake Ferguson. Next play, he's finding a wide open Rico Dowdle. Now, these guys are adding yards after the catch, and it's first down. Another pass on first down. And they're just looking like an efficient offense and going quickly. And I'm there thinking to myself, wait a minute, who are these guys? What is this team? What are we doing? Are we allowed to use tempo when the game is not completely out of reach? Because that's the only time we've seen the Cowboys do tempo, really, in 2024. So I was getting excited, I'm not going to lie. Then that drive kind of died down a little bit, a lot of execution issues, one of which was there was a screen pass to Rico Dowdle where Zach Martin was not blocking properly, right? He was a little bit late to that block, and that ended up costing the Cowboys a chance to score a touchdown. So there we are. We gotta settle for a field goal. Okay, I guess. And then after those 2 drives, it was pretty much back to your regular old-fashioned 2024 Cowboys, where one of the biggest storylines for this game, and this is one of the reasons why I also think the Cowboys looked utterly hopeless today, is we talked about this on Thursday. Something has to give. The Falcons were walking into this one with one of the worst pass rushes in the entire NFL. On the Fox broadcast, they called it anemic. You heard it, I heard it, right? And the Cowboys had one of the worst pass protection units in the entire NFL heading into this game. We've seen it week after week. The tackles are not playing great. You've got Tyler Guyton on the one hand. The other side, you've got Terrence Steele, who is not playing good at all. He is actually, I would argue, your worst of the two offensive tackles. Terrence Steele has been bad, guys. He really has been bad. But we thought, hey, maybe against the Falcons, they're going to look good. Here was a problem, though. One of these two bad units was going to look worse than the other. And it was absolutely the Cowboys' offensive line. Matthew Judon had arguably his best game of the season. The Falcons got into this one with 6 sacks, for the entire season. So they had played 8 games coming into this one, and they had sacked quarterbacks only 6 times. They got 3 against the Cowboys alone, and 2 of them happened in the opening 2 drives of the game. How do you explain that? This is a prime opportunity for a unit to bounce back and have a get-right type of game, but it's always the other team that gets those get-right type of games, because that pass rush was clicking for the Falcons. There were a lot of problems, man. Now, on defense, there was just a lack of respect from the Falcons, and that's even though they were stopped in the opening drive. They went for it on 4th and 4. They went for it on 4th and 5, didn't they? The Falcons were just not respecting the Cowboys a whole lot. Kalen Carson was back, and we celebrated the fact that Kalen Carson was back, because when your cornerback is Amani Oruwariye, I'm sure I mispronounced that, and I'm sorry. But when you go from that to Kalen Carson, it is an upgrade. I was excited about getting back Kalen Carson, even though he's a 5th-round rookie. Kirk Cousins knew immediately, okay, I'm going after that guy. And they were picking at him early on in the game. But he was also not afraid of going Trevon Diggs' way. And I'm going to tell you something. In coverage, Trevon Diggs had a couple nice plays. The Drake London touchdown that he allowed, you got to give it to the Falcons. That was a nice throw. That was a nice catch from Drake London. He entered this game with the 2nd most contested catches in the entire NFL. He had 11 of them coming into this one. Made it 12 with that touchdown. He has been pretty good in that. I don't know there's a whole lot that Trevon Diggs could have done to avoid that. Now, with that being said, Trevon Diggs didn't look great as a tackler. Right in coverage, there were some nice moments. And we'll get to the miscommunication issue that cost that big Falcons touchdown. Do not worry. But in coverage at first, it was solid. It was pretty nice. The tackling was bad. The miscommunication issues were frustrating. That whole sequence with Trevon Diggs being banged up, getting off the field, then the Cowboys calling a timeout, getting him back on the field, and he not even knowing where to go, the whole lineup being completely lost versus bunch, because the Falcons really getting these tight splits against man coverage, and they basically send the cornerbacks, the wide receivers, the cornerbacks way to free up the underneath guy. He was wide open. The Cowboys were not ready for that at all. And there were so many of these mental mistakes from the Cowboys in this game, which is also another reason why they looked pretty hopeless. Because, if you're getting blown up at the line of scrimmage, all right, we've been there the entire season. You don't have the talent at defensive tackle. And right now, with your top 3 defensive ends, you don't have them in the edges either. Now, that is one thing. And another thing is not lining up properly. And another thing is on the other side of the ball on offense, all of these false start penalties, man, they're just frustrating. And I always said this, if Tyler Guyton gets called for a holding versus Matthew Judon, I can live with it just because he's a 1st-round rookie that we all knew had a low floor and that he was always more of a project. The problem is that the Cowboys absolutely need the project to play now. But I'm not against Guyton not being great, because that was never fair to ask from Guyton. So if he gets called for a holding, I can live with that. Because, he's in a tough spot. That is one thing. Another thing is to keep seeing all of these false starts that the Cowboys keep being called for. There was this whole sequence in the second half. First play of the game, they get called for a false start. Immediately, you are behind the wheel, behind the sticks. Immediately, you're putting yourself in trouble consistently with these sort of false starts. Now, they get 4 down. They do the fake punt thing. I'll get to the fake punt in a moment. Later on in the game, another false start. You get to 2nd and 9, and you run a draw. So play calling not helping out the Cowboys offense either. And then you get 12 men in the huddle on 4th down when you only had to get that inch to move the chains. Gotta be kidding me, man. It is mental mistake after mental mistake after mental mistake. And again, if you're being called for holding because you got beat, that is one thing. But if you're being called for false starts and all that, that is a whole different thing. And that is just completely unacceptable. And it is unacceptable that we've been talking about this for well over a year. The thing is that in previous seasons, you were making up for it other ways. Now you don't have a way to do so because you are bad at football, and it's being so evident right now. That 12 men in the huddle, man, that felt to me like, man, I wanted to stop watching. If I was just a fan and I didn't have to do all this for A to Z Sports Dallas, I would have stopped watching the damn game. Honestly, man. It is frustrating. Now, there are so many other things that I've got on my notebook, so I'm just going to keep venting with you as we go on. But in the meantime, though, let me actually read some of your venting. Let's see what you guys have over there in the chat. Shout out to Gregory, who is celebrating being a member of the channel for 22 months. I am going to completely ignore the fact that he's bragging about the Dodgers winning the World Series because I've got enough sports pain to deal with today. So I'm not going to deal with that. Cam says they forgot the offense. LOL, pathetic, shake my head. Beanie says, let's get a top 5 pick. And you know what? If you're talking about this on the 3rd of November, that means your team is not doing great. And the fact that it might not be as crazy for the Cowboys to go out there and get a top 10 draft pick, man, that is insane to me. Because if you would have told me the Cowboys are not going to make the playoffs, I would probably be like, oh, that's tough because they're likely going to be like they won 12, 8, 9 games, and they just missed out on the playoffs, and they're going to have like the 16th, 17th overall pick or something like that. But right now, that top 10 pick is looking completely feasible, right? Over here, we've got Beach We Up, Cut Steel, saying over here, sorry if I mispronounced the username. Hey, Bench Steel, says Joey Bella. And we've got a lot of people calling out Steel. Beanie says Steely is bad. Oh, he's bad. He is bad. And he is costing you so much in so many of these games. Because if Terrence Hill was holding on his own, like, I'm not even going to talk about him being elite or anything like that, but if you could trust him to survive by himself, you could help out Tyler Guyton and make the rookie's life easier. The problem is you got to help out both tackles, and that's when it really gets ugly, right? Let's talk about the back-to-back sacks, for example. First sack, I agree with Greg Olsen and what he said during the broadcast. That was on Dak. He had time to either, 1, get rid of the football, or 2, throw it to wide-ass open Jalen Tolbert, who was completely open on that play, man, and just he didn't pull the trigger on that one. Now, that is on Dak. Second sack, though, 1 tackle gets beat, and I saw some arguments on the internet of people being like, oh, man, he's got to run more. Dak has to take off and run when that happens. Yes, ideally, but we know the situation there. But when both tackles are being beaten, that is just not easy to do, right? You freeze that play, you go there, you watch the replay, you hit pause right when Dak is being pressured. Both tackles are turning their backs to the sidelines, right? One is going one way, the other is going the other, but both guys are completely beaten. Joey Bella says, Guyton is exceptional, but not Steele. And I'm assuming we're talking about like the traits and the upside and all that. Because I don't think Guyton was great either today. I mean, as I said, he's a first-round rookie. We know about the low floor. I'm not going to get upset at Tyler Guyton not playing great, but I can get upset at Terrence Steele playing bad because on top of it all, he's one of the few guys that you did go out of your way to pay early on, right? He didn't really need that contract when you gave it to him, but that one, unlike Dak Prescott, unlike CeeDee Lamb, you could not wait to pay Terrence Steele. The Cowboys couldn't. And I don't know if that's because that's one of their guys. He was undrafted. He was one of the gems of the Cowboys scouting department. Maybe that's what went into all that. But, man, it's just rough. The fake punt, man. Holy smokes. There were a couple of calls that really stand out to me as far as just the coaching side of it and the play calling. Because there's a lot of issues with the play calling, right? We can talk about a lot of examples. But there were a couple of very situationally calls that I absolutely hated. These were probably two of the most important plays in the game, and you completely butchered them. One was 4th and 1, and you go the CeeDee Lamb route with the motion and then the jet sweep, and CeeDee Lamb gets completely destroyed in the backfield. You got to gain 1 yard on that play. Got to gain 1 yard. Here's my biggest problem with it. You don't have a good rushing offense, but you know in what situations they actually have been pretty efficient? Like I'm talking top 10 in the NFL efficient, 3rd and 4th down. And you know why that is? Not because they're getting explosive plays on 3rd down. That's because when it comes to 3rd and 1 to 4th and 1, they've actually been pretty efficient moving the chains. I don't know about this call with CeeDee Lamb. This has not been working for a good while now. Early on, the Cowboys couldn't do a lot when they were running the football. So their changeup to the fastball, which the fastball was just spamming inside zone over and over again, even though it was not working out. It's like a pitcher keeps throwing 70 miles per hour fastballs down Broadway, right? The Cowboys were just running inside, and that was the thing. The changeup was, let's hand it off to one of the wide receivers. Now, we saw it with Brandon Cooks. We saw it with CeeDee. I think we saw it with Kevontae Turpin a couple times. But that stopped working a good while ago because teams now know this. Like, if you're prepping to face the Cowboys offense, you know that one of the things that they do to get the ball to the perimeter is they like to hand it off to their wide receivers. So 4th and 1, just going that route. I think when CeeDee went into motion, we all kind of face-palmed ourselves maybe. Like when I saw CeeDee go into motion, I was like, this is what they're going to do right now. And of course, that didn't work out. That was one. The other was a fake punt. Man, the fake punt was hilarious in a very sad way. I'm not going to lie to you. I understand wanting to be aggressive, and I'm not going to be against wanting to be aggressive. I would have thought, hey, the recommendation probably was to punt if you look at the models, but I'm not sure if it was. Let's say you want to go for it. Let's say that's what you do, right? You've got one or two possibilities. One is, okay, let's keep the offense on the field, and let's hope Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb do something right here. Or maybe Jake Ferguson. Or maybe we use CeeDee to draw the attention to one side, and boom, we hit them with a surprise. Or maybe we do a reverse flea flicker like the Lions like to do. I'm not saying I would have loved that either, but it's still you're putting the ball in the hands of somebody that usually throws a football and somebody that usually catches the football. Instead, the Cowboys were like, nah, F that. We're doing Brian Anger and a specialist. And maybe somebody went like, hey, you know what? Jalen Brooks usually lines up in that spot. He's a wide receiver. They'll never see it coming. And then a coach maybe was like, nah, CJ Goodwin. And man, as I tweeted out, like insert comment about the probabilities of Brian Anger and CJ Goodwin completing a pass. And then you see Mike McCarthy all pissed off in the sidelines because there was no flag. There cannot be a defensive pass interference in that spot in the game because of NFL rules. There can be a defensive holding, but even if there was holding, How often are you going to see a ref actually throw that flag? It's like when there are 20 seconds left in a game in the fourth quarter and a quarterback throws a deep shot and there's some contact. Usually referees are going to allow more leeway there because it's a rough spot. It's a weird situation. And I don't know. Man, it was just weird to see that fake punt call. I'm not going to lie to you. Joseph says, yup, another terrible call. And he adds, this whole mess will get blown up after the season. Yeah, man, I agree. Bruce says, it's starting to feel like a draft season already. And I'll tell you what. I looked at the playoff percentages on Friday. According to several betting models and several, not betting models, but it's statistical models is what I should have said. And I also looked at the betting market, the odds for the Cowboys to make the playoffs, and I calculated the true implied probabilities of the Cowboys making the playoffs. So here is what The Athletic had to say about the Cowboys' chances of making the playoffs before Sunday, before losing to the Falcons. The Athletic, using EPA per play and all that sort of stuff, calculated a 17% chance of the Cowboys making the postseason. DVOA, which measures efficiency in its own way, 14.7%. ESPN, which uses its own football power index, 12%. According to the betting market, a little bit higher, 23.8%. And I think that had to do a little bit with just the Cowboys usually being overvalued in the betting markets. So already you had a very rough chance of making the postseason. Now you lose this one. You've got 2 more games versus the Eagles, 2 more games versus the Commanders. The Texans themselves are not easy either. You still get the Panthers. Do you get the Bengals? Yes, you do get the Bengals. You get the Buccaneers. It's not easy. Right now, I would tell you, I'm not betting any money on the Cowboys making the playoffs this season. I think they're pretty much done. Now, the big challenge for Dallas, though, is moving forward. How do you get everyone together? How do you regroup as a team from this one? Because I'm not one to really overreact to kind of like heat of the moment situations. But Dak Prescott did say we effing suck on the sidelines. And I'm not saying everyone heard it, but everyone is going to hear about that video that is going around where he's talking to Trey Lance and he says, we effing suck. And the reality is they do. Right now they do. And I'm not sure if the Cowboys can really come back from that. We'll see. I'm not going to say that the locker room is broken, but there doesn't seem to be a feeling of this is going to get fixed within the locker room, right? Go back to the early weeks of the season, and ever since then, you were hearing players essentially calling out each other through the media, right? We heard about people not doing their jobs. We heard about the details. We heard about this, that, and the other. Again, man, I'm not sure if we could talk about Dallas' locker room being broken, but the vibes are definitely not great. And I do wonder if they come back from all of this start mentally and how bought in they are into the coaching staff. Because players talk about this stuff, right? Like players talk about the play calls of their coaches. We see it at every level of football. I don't think that changes once you get into the NFL. How bought in are they into what they've got in 2024? Because the fan base is done, it seems like, with the Cowboys right now. Like the fan base is accepting that this team is 3-5, and they're accepting that the playoffs are a pipe dream as of today, or as of last week or 2 weeks ago, or whatever you want to say, right? When does that happen for the players? It's going to be tough. Now, with all this being said, the Cowboys do have a trade deadline on Tuesday, and Jerry Jones went out there and he kind of tried to inject some hope into the hearts of Cowboys fans by saying that they've got a couple of things brewing ahead of the trade deadline. I'm here to tell you, don't expect a whole lot. I'm here to tell you they might not even be right in being buyers at this year's trade deadline. If we're looking at it objectively, you're 3-5. Who knows when Darren Bland is going to come back? Who knows when Micah Parsons is going to come back? Because to me, it kind of seems like they don't know, because they didn't place Micah on injured reserve, and he's up to 4 games missed right now. They were running Darren Bland at full speed in week 6 before he apparently suffered a setback and ended up losing or missing out 3 games since that, right? The Lions game, the Niners game, and now the Falcons game. The quarterback is hurt, which we haven't talked about too. Dak Prescott is banged up. CeeDee Lamb appears to be banged up. I'll talk about that in a bit too. Why would you buy at the trade deadline? Why would you? You need those draft picks for next year, because especially if that's the only way you're going to build your team in 2025, because that might be the only way they're going to do it. I don't think the Cowboys are going to go into 2025 and just change their whole philosophy. That would be unlike them. That would be uncharacteristic of them. So I would argue you don't even have to make a trade on Tuesday at this point. I don't think you get to save this one. I don't think you get to fall asleep at the wheel January through August and September and November and October, and then save all of it in November. So let me tell you something. Say that they didn't want to sign Stephon Gilmore. All right, I kind of get it. But then Darren Bland goes down in training camp and you do nothing. He is up to 8 games missed. Darren Bland is. He is missing 8 games for you. And when he went down, the Cowboys shrugged their shoulders and they were like, oh, trust us. Kellen Carson is pretty damn good. And then Kellen Carson missed his own chunk of games. And the Cowboys didn't sign anybody. They called up somebody from the practice squad. They didn't go out there and sign somebody. They again shrugged their shoulders and they were 8. So if Jerry Jones wants to go on Tuesday and make a move just to make some headlines and be like, oh, we are actually trying, honestly, 1, don't buy into it. 2, they might be wrong in doing that in the first place. The Cowboys should be looking at potentially selling players, if anything. Now, I see some of your comments on Micah, right? Morris Jackson says, I would trade Parsons. Over here on YouTube, we've got the same, right? We've got Beach We Up, trade Parsons, trade Dix also. Okay. I don't know about that one. I would kind of love it in a way if they went down that path, because it would show a level of being proactive that we are not used to. That being said, though, I'm not sure about moving on from Micah Parsons. I wouldn't, personally. I would prefer to keep the guy who is your best player on defense when healthy, because I still believe that. Julian Webb says, keep losing, they might get Travis Hunter. Getting Travis Hunter would be awesome, to be honest. I'm not sure if I don't think you get him if you don't have a top 3 draft pick at this point, because Travis Hunter keeps doing his thing, and that's pretty cool to see. But, man, it's going to be tough. Now, what else can I say about this particular game? Honestly, man, I think it's a frustrating outing for the Cowboys. I think that season is not slowly per se, but just I think we're all slowly realizing that, yeah, there is no saving this. There's absolutely no saving what the Cowboys put together for the 2024 NFL season. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Now, regarding Dak Prescott, I think it wasn't his worst game of the season, but also it wasn't perfect at all. There were a couple of missed throws to Jake Ferguson where he had the ball set pretty high. There were some underthrows to CeeDee Lamb, and there was the missed shot of Jalen Tolbert. It's just not good enough, though, to save a roster that is currently bad. Even if you didn't turn the ball over on this one, it is just bad. We'll see if anything changes, though, as we head into week 10, potentially with no Dak Prescott. We don't know. So what we know about Dak, though, is that he did suffer a hamstring injury. Dak described it as something that he had never felt before. I don't know what to make of that, but he did say it would take a lot for me to not be out there. And I think based on what we know from Dak, I will take his word for it. I will say, hey, you know what? If Dak can play, if Dak has a 1% shot of playing, then he will. I think the Cowboys will just allow him to do so too. We'll see. If he doesn't go, it's going to be Cooper Rush. We better get used to that idea. I know a lot of people will want to see Trey Lance, but I'm here to tell you, Trey Lance did nothing to beat Cooper Rush in August, and I don't think Cooper Rush was anywhere close to being bad enough to change the Cowboys' decision in Week 9. So, in Week 10, expect Cooper Rush to go if Dak cannot go, but hopefully Dak can go, because otherwise, I don't know how you're beating the Eagles. Already in itself is going to be a very tough challenge, but we'll see, man. Hopefully it's not something as serious as a muscle tear, as Maurice Jackson says in the chat. Hopefully it is just like a hamstring pull or something like that, which are always troublesome. Hamstring injuries are always linger if not treated properly. So maybe the Cowboys do end up going the patient route. I will say before we leave, though, regarding CeeDee Lamb, major shout out to CeeDee. Oh, and I got another massive shout out to do, and you already know where this is going. You can call it in the chat. We're about to shout out a player that did a tremendous job today. So you can go out there and you can predict where this is going in the chat. But in the meantime, though, a massive shout out to CeeDee Lamb. I don't think it was faking, as Cam says in the chat. I don't think Cedarian DeLeon Lamb was faking there. That was a tough hit on his shoulder, played through it, and a lot of people said, you know what, pull him from the game. You're already down 2 scores. You don't have Dak Prescott. But City needed to be there because the season is on the freaking line, man. You're falling to 3-5. So I respect CeeDee Lamb for staying on that field, and I think it was a right call to allow him to do so because you needed the win. It was very tough to get, but if you were it was gonna be with the help of CeeDee Lamb. Gotta respect it, man. He showed a special type of willingness staying in that game. And I'm not gonna criticize the coaching staff for leaving him on the field. I thought just the how massive your need to win that game was, you had to let him there, even if it was Cooper Rush making the throws. Now, the other shout out that we need to get through before we go is, holy smokes, Rico Dowdle is running back 1. Should have been treated as running back 1 since August when the Cowboys were resting Ezekiel Elliott in the preseason opener, only for him to not show up to meetings, according to James Slater, which is what led to him being inactive today. It is, in my opinion, what should lead to him being cut from the Cowboys this week, but I don't know if they will go down that route based on how they do things. Probably not. But Rico Dowdle, holy smokes, he averaged 6.2 yards per carry on this game. He was on fire. He added 5 catches. He had himself a game. Mike McCarthy said in the week, this is important. Listen in. Mike McCarthy said in the game, during the week, that they did not prefer to do a running back by committee. That kind of it felt like a shot at the front office. Maybe it wasn't, but that's what it felt like. So there is no committee anymore in Dallas, it feels like. It feels like it's going to be the Rico Dowdle show, and we'll see how that looks like moving forward. Have a great rest of your Sunday night, man. I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in to A to Z Sports Dallas Prime Time. As always, hit the like button for me if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Quick hitting videos Monday through Wednesday, and then again live on Thursday, 8 p.m. Central. Bye-bye.